Dawn of War 4 could be coming very soon. At least, that is what is possibly suggested by a new job advert related to Dawn of War 4's publishing. And in fact, it may well be giving us a small hint about the possible timeline for the game's release. Now, before we do get ahead of ourselves though, this is of course definitely speculation, but it's still worth taking a look at. So there is a post, a job advert in fact, from Marvin Hall, the director of franchise at Plyon. In the post, he explains that they are looking for an experienced community engagement and social media manager to help lead and strengthen community support for Dawn of War 4. To be honest, it does sound like a very fun job, and so if that's something that you are interested in, it's worth applying, and if that's the case, it's worth taking a look at his LinkedIn profile, where you can find further details to apply. Either way, according to the listing, the primary focus of the role would be managing the community on Steam with additional support across Discord, Reddit, and other social media platforms. The person hired for the role would need strong copywriting skills, deep knowledge of Warhammer, and experience managing gaming communities. The job description also mentions that the successful candidate would help support the title through release as well as post-launch activities, which suggests that this role is intended to be active during the game's launch window and the months that follow. But the detail that really caught my attention is the length of the proposed position. It's listed as a 6-month freelance contract based in the UK or Europe. And at first glance, that might not seem particularly significant, but when you combine that with the fact that the role is specifically meant to support the game through release and post-launch activities, it raises an interesting possibility. If someone is being hired right now for a 6-month contract to manage the community during the launch period, as well as the early post-launch phase, it could suggest that the developers expect the most intense period of community activity to happen within that same 6-month window. In other words, and again this is just speculation, it raises the question of whether Dawn of War 4 could potentially launch within roughly the next 6 months. However, there are a few important things we need to consider before jumping to that conclusion. Right now, the only actual official information that we have about the release window is that the game is planned for release in 2026. That is the only confirmed timeframe that has been publicly mentioned so far. We also know that the game is currently undergoing periodic alpha testing. Some players have already been invited to participate in early test builds, which means that the game is still in relatively early stages of development compared to a finished release build. That does lead to an interesting question: how likely is it for a game to transition from an alpha testing phase to a full commercial launch in just 6 months? In many cases, that process can take longer because alpha testing is usually followed by additional development work, balancing, polishing, bug fixing, and often even a beta testing phase before release. It also wouldn't be the first time that a game's release date has been postponed to allow for further development. So that 2026 initial announcement for release probably isn't set in stone. So while the 6-month contract might make it tempting to speculate about a 6-month launch window, the current state of development, at least by the fact that it's in alpha stages, and the planned 2026 release window suggests that the situation may not be quite so simple. Having said that, it is already March, and well, 6 months from now would be September, which of course is leading up to the end of 2026. So I guess with the game expected to be released in 2026, September of course still fits that bill. Now another possibility is that the 6-month contract as advertised could be intended to support a broader marketing ramp-up rather than the exact release date itself. The community manager could be hired to help build hype, manage early testing communities, and prepare the official platforms like Steam and Discord for the much larger player base that of course will eventually arrive closer to launch. Still though, the fact that a community manager is being hired specifically for Dawn of War 4 does tell us something important. It suggests that the project is moving forward and that the developers are beginning to think more seriously about community engagement and communication. That is usually a sign that the game is moving into a phase where public interaction with players becomes more important, which often means we could start seeing more news, updates, or announcements in the future. To be honest, we've actually been getting quite a lot of news drops about Dawn of War 4 recently, which is of course awesome to see, ranging from several trailers to the Orcs faction reveal videos as part of IGN First. I'm really hoping that we'll see more, including perhaps deeper reveals of the other 3 factions in Dawn of War 4, the Space Marines, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and of course the Necrons. Either way, this job advert clearly shows that things are ramping up. Now, for the fans of the series who have been waiting a very long time for the next Dawn of War game, even small signs like this are incredibly exciting. But what do you think? From the quality of the trailers we've seen so far, including the gameplay footage, and from what we know more broadly about Dawn of War 4, do you think that the 6-month contract could hint at a possible launch window, or do you think it is simply part of a longer build-up toward a release at the end of 2026, or do you think in fact that the game's release could be delayed beyond 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you do want to stay up to date with everything related to Dawn of War, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Thanks for watching, and if you've been enjoying the videos, make sure to give this one a thumbs up. Thanks for all the support, take care, and see you next time.